So he said, you need to put a full page ad in for your gallery and show the artwork you have for sale. And he said, that's when it took off. And people have commented to me, a couple people said, well, one person in particular, she said, he keeps talking about this full page ad, and he does. He's talked about it previously, he talks about it in the book, and he talked about it as recently as the Jason Dent's interview that they had for German Playboy. He brings up again the full page ad. And then she said, what do you think's going on with that? And I said, I have no idea. And then all of a sudden I thought, maybe he's talking about that double page outlay in The Thrill of the Chase. Maybe he's trying to say there's a clue in those pictures. And he's trying to say, look at those pictures, folks. Get it? Full page ad. It's the only thing in the book that's 2 pages that are all connected. For all I know, it's in the other books too. I know about the other books. I don't know if there's any where he's put in 2 pages or whatever of anything. Obviously, Thrill of the Chase was the first book, and I think the idea occurred to him with the first book. And but it is kind of eye-opening to see 2 pages for anything in a Forrest Fenn book, because he just doesn't do it, right? SMT7 says, I like your videos. Keep up the good work. Unfortunately, I don't think this is a location. I agree. I agree, except that maybe TheBlaze could tell you you could be looking quickly down the river. But why quickly? That's always my question. Why do we have to look quickly down a river? Why do we have to look quickly down when we're looking at a blaze? The only reason I can figure out that you would look quickly down would be if you're in motion or the blaze is in motion. And of course we have the image of the carousel that's been repeated in the Forrest Fenn story. It was in, it was at the end, Troy Barlow again, it was at the end of one of my things where I talked about a carousel. Had no idea about this, and of course we all know that Forrest Fenn likes J.D. Salinger, the guy who wrote The Catcher in the Rye. And Troy wrote me, he said, well, you realize that book ends with a carousel, right? I go, no. I was just talking about a carousel, talking about the idea you have to grab things as they go by, meaning the brass ring, you have to grab things as they go by. And the whole thing with the banana tree, you know, the bananas, his father said you got to grab every banana. And so this notion that you have to grab something that's going by, or I always think, what if you're going over a bridge? Excuse me, there's a bridge that you cross right after you go into the west entrance of Yellowstone, heading towards 9 Mile Hole. You go over a bridge before you go into the entrance road. And I looked both sides. I thought, if I see something unusual as I'm traveling, well then obviously I better look quickly down to see what's below it because I'm moving. And I didn't see anything offhand, but then some other people might say, well, you should really get out of the car and look. That's the only reason. I know I repeat myself for people that have seen my videos before, but I don't know why you're looking quickly down unless you're trying to capture a moment in time. Either you're moving, or the treasure chest, or the blaze is moving, or the treasure chest. I don't know, that's a confusing concept that something's moving. I don't know, folks. But anyway. Someone mentioned Andy Briggs. Andy Briggs is the guy who Forrest Fenn said was very close to solving the poem. Andy Briggs is English. He's an author, and he's done, I think, some fantasy books and stuff like that. And he got into the Forrest Fenn hunt. And I found that kind of exciting. And here we go again with things you read. So Forrest Fenn did in fact say that Andy Briggs was very good hunter, and I think he said he's the closest of anyone to figuring it out. And then I go look up Andy Briggs. I've never read his book about it. He has some book about it. I'll probably put up for you to see. But I think it has to do with ciphers and codes. And then there's another quote. When I'm researching Andy Briggs on Google, where Fenn says no ciphers are involved. No ciphers or codes. So again, you know, Fenn says Andy Briggs has come the closest of anyone to finding it or figured it out. And then you go find out that Andy Briggs' solve has to do with ciphers and codes. And then Forrest Fenn himself is quoted as saying the solve has nothing to do with ciphers or codes. This is the maddening stuff that drives me, at least, and I know some other people, a little nutty. You almost, you know, someone said a long time ago, I think even Fenn said, he said, don't read anything on the internet about this because it's just going to confuse you. And it does, because some of the stuff he says confuses me. Anyway. Let's see what else. Blah, 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 blah. Da, ba, da, ba. I'm trying to remember to give the name of the commentator. Oh, a guy named Whistlebird Productions. He said, when did you film this? I filmed it, I was out there May 24th this year. He said, I think I was there. And he said, it's very accessible, right? Well, anyway, he sent me a picture. Or, no, I looked at his video. I think I went to Whistlebird Productions videos. And he was there. He was there at the Rock. And when he was there were buffalo walking around it. And then he went up. He basically has a number of videos. I'll probably put his link in too. Everything I talk about, a link. If I don't show it on the front, on the screen, it'll be in the descriptions. But he went all the way up to interesting place right up the river, right down the river. Right down the river. The river kind of starts meandering very broadly through this lowland, and there's a pullout right there. And he is out there. He's out there on the video. He's looking under this big log formation, this kind of weird log. It looks like a fallen down tree or something. And I was so glad he shows on his video that he looked there, because I was up at the pullout and I didn't want to walk across this low kind of land because it looks kind of wet and marshy. A lot of that area around the river is kind of just barely above water. It's like I walked in actually with my fishing sandals. They're very thick. They're protective sandals, and they're kind of a rubber sandal, but they can get wet. So I walked into various parts of that river when I was looking for the rock and stuff, but I didn't want to walk out there because it was very far to get out there, and I saw that thing, and I thought, man, maybe there's a rock under that thing, you know? And he goes out there in his video, and he looks under and says, nope, nothing here. Nothing here. Move along. Go home. Whistlebird Productions. That was pretty cool. So he was there, yeah. Oh, but I forgot to say, the pull-out, or pull-off, I don't know what you call these things. You know, these little things where you pull your car in off the road. Looks kind of like a sock. Looks kind of like a sock. Remember the famous sock picture where they have the 3 socks that kind of curve? I mean, you can just think so many things about this. Either right or you're wrong, who knows? And if in fact the socks refer to a pull-out or a pull-off or a pull-in, that of course is where the rock was, the Blaze rock was. It was in a pull-out, right at a pull-out. It was very close to the road. Like I think I said in my previous video, that it was probably about the rock's probably about 100 feet off the road, which meant that Fenn was very close to the road. Brought up the whole subject of, do we know if Forrest Fenn if he spent the afternoon placing the treasure, which is another way I like to, I'd rather say placing the treasure than hiking in with the treasure. Because he could have been in a spot where he had to start and stop at times because of people. It may have taken him a long time to go a very short distance because he didn't want to be seen, because he wanted to be alone. He only wanted to do it when people weren't looking. So he could be fairly close to the road, but if he had to keep stopping because people came around, similar to what I was doing when I was next to the rock, it could have taken him longer. He could have just taken a long lunch. I think all he ever said was, it took me an afternoon to do it. Forrest Fenn never said, you know, I was there for an afternoon. I walked in for half an hour. I walked out for a half an hour. I spent a half an hour placing the treasure. I walked in for another half an hour. I walked in for 45 minutes. I walked out for 45. I exactly filled up an afternoon walking in and out to place the treasure. No, he could have very well just, all he said was, I spent an afternoon placing the treasure. And we all, I should speak for myself, I sit there and I go, that means he spent, 40 minutes going in, and then he had 15 minutes to do this, and then he had 40 minutes to get out, and then maybe he took a break, and then he had 40 minutes back in. And I don't know that's what he did. I get a little wound up, this thing. Someone brought up something I forgot about. He said, did you check the 12-foot radius around the blaze? I forgot that, I guess this guy, I pinned him down. I said, what are you talking about? This was Mike Markham. Mike Markham. And I said, what are you talking about, the 12-foot radius? I don't really remember. He said, the Fenn once said that he can't imagine someone not seeing the treasure chest if he's within 12 feet of the treasure. Which really wouldn't be a 12-foot radius, would it? That would be more like a 24-foot radius, right? If you could be within 12 feet of it. That makes sense? I'm not good at math. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, think about what that means, folks. We know that people have been within 200. I don't want to discourage people. These are the reasons sometimes I get kind of depressed. It's just a hobby, right? But if Fenn said he can't imagine someone not seeing the treasure chest if they're within 12 feet of it, is that what he said, or did he say the blaze? Oh, he says the blaze. Did you check a 12-foot radius around the blaze? And I said no, but there was nothing but short grass within a 12-foot radius on the roadside, except for that on the other side of the rock was the river. And he said, was there a blaze mentioned in the Journal of Trapper representing the terrain for the blaze? He's talking about Osborne, the book by Osborne. The blaze for the mountain men was a very common phrase. It's still a common phrase. I mean, to mark a blaze, to set a blaze, to blaze a path, to put a blaze on a tree. Blaze is a very common woodland, wood lore phrase, and it was very big back in the mountain man days. So was Tarry, as a matter of fact. You go back and you read some of the mountain men books, things about which I've always been fascinated with before I ever heard about Forrest Fenn. The whole mountain man thing is just amazing. It really is amazing. I mean, the things these guys, if you've seen things like the Leo DiCaprio movie and some other movies, Jeremiah Johnson and all that. I mean, what the hell were these guys thinking? I mean, obviously they were thinking about making money, killing beaver, but boy, that's a scary life to live out just in the middle of nowhere with Indians around and stuff and wild animals. What a life. These guys were just incredible people. But they would use that word Tarry as part of the common vernacular. Now it's kind of an antiquated word to tarry. Don't wait around, don't tarry. But back then they would say it normally. So anyway, he said they used that term blaze. I said, well, yeah, but I'm still not quite understanding about the 12 foot, and that's when he said, Journal of a Trapper. He said, well, Fenn had said, you should be able to see the treasure chest, I think, if you're within 12 feet of the blaze or something. Or you should be able to see the blaze if you're within 12 feet. What is wrong with me? I don't even know what I'm talking about, and I'm on here doing a video about it. And then people start hitting me with this sage thing. Where does Fenn sage? Did you see sage? I never knew Fenn said anything about sage. And they're like, yeah, remember pinyon nuts, sage, and all that? And I'm going, I don't remember the sage. And I haven't looked it up, so I'm going to look like a dumbass. I don't care. I do not know if I saw sage when I was out there, folks. I know that I saw a rock. I did not see or smell pinyon nuts, because I do know what a pinyon tree looks like. There were pinyon trees out when I was in Vermilion Creek in Colorado, and I do not know. There were no pinyon nuts in trees there when I was looking at the rock. There weren't any. People say there was sage. A lot of people people like to comment on my background noise. The river was in the background when you're watching that. And on a different video, I had this very, very low playing ambient music. It was actually part of the backdrop that I was using. So I just turned it very much down so that you could primarily hear me. And this one lady, I forget her name, but she said, I thought my toilet was running. And then this guy, there's a guy here, said the same exact thing. John123 said, thought my toilet was running with your water sounds in the background. Yeah, that was the river.